Chuck had met Jim in a coffee shop about 5 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And I was thinking back to that day, thinking back to you and I talking on the phone the other day. That's when Chuck came home that night when he had met Jim, or just right after that. What was that experience like for you? I remember he sat with Brad and I for a couple hours and told us, I met this guy, Jim, in a coffee shop, and he asked me to sit down, and I was super nervous. So what was it like when Chuck came home and told you that he had met Jim Shorkey in a coffee shop?
Well, we knew Jim because his sister actually was our neighbor. And so we knew of him and knew who he was. When he met him at the coffee shop that day and came home and said, he didn't tell me all at once what he wanted to do, but he said that they talked and that Jim was doing something different, and he kind of laid that all out. And then he hit me with, for Christmas, I want to do this program that Jim is doing. That's what I want my Christmas present to be. And I was like, all right, if you want that to be your Christmas present, then go ahead. And that's when he started working with you.
Right.
And his sales at the job that he was currently working in skyrocketed, and he had the best sales year that he ever had. And then you said, let's join forces, Chuck. That's when I thought Chuck was crazy. Because he came home and said, I'm going to leave this job with stability and I'm going to go do this. And I never said no, but we did have some discussions about it. And finally I just said, if it makes you happy and this is what you want to do, then I'll support you 100%. Because he loved helping people, and this was a way that he was able to do that and use the degree that he had while doing it.
So it seems like, Darlene, results from thinking that success blueprint that Jim used is really helpful for Chuck in reaching a lot of his daily goals. I know he told me a lot that he would journal, that he would, really take these disciplines to heart. Did you notice a difference in Chuck when he started going through the Rethink You success process with Jim?
Immediately. His focus on everything changed. Our relationship got better, his other relationships in his life, the way he felt about himself changed. He did journal more. He cared more about his health. Like he slowly it was a progression over time. It wasn't all at one time, but over the course of time, he it was almost immediate. Like within the first couple months, I started to notice a big difference in just his focus and what he cared about and his goals. He kind of lost sight of goals in the sales jobs that he had been in before. So, yeah.
And Jim, what was that like for you working with Chuck? You obviously met in that coffee shop that day.
Yeah.
What was that like? You had this kind of bright-eyed, bushy-tailed guy that was excited to do stuff together. What was that like for you?
Well, this is powerful stuff. And so where it comes from is, with my experience in the automobile business of being very, very successful, but also having failed. And so, I failed miserably. And I've told the story, hundreds of times, 1998, bankruptcy imminent. Actually, let me back up. My dad died on March 24th, 1996. I've often said, if I knew half as much as I thought I knew when my dad died, I would have been pretty darn smart. So I proceeded to run the business from a very arrogant, know-it-all type of a basis. Ended up 2 years later, bankruptcy imminent. Meaning my dad ran this business for 22 years, I ran it for 2 years. He was very successful, I'm bankruptcy imminent. And so I had to change fast, very fast. And so I was reading Think and Grow Rich at the time, but I really wasn't applying it. So I started to apply it, really push that application of it. And the business turned around and it became very, very, very successful through a process of a lot of stuff, which is not really your question, but through a process of a lot of stuff. And so at some point in my life, when I was really, really successful, from a car dealer, making money perspective, I had to be honest with myself and say, this isn't all me. It wasn't all me. It wasn't all me. I had so many great mentors, so many people to help me. Mr. Hamilton, Elazar, Chrysler Financial, GMAC, John Amato, on and on and on and on. All these people that helped me. And I thought, if I took this information to the grave with me, I would I felt I would be the most selfish person in history. So I knew that someday I was going to take this message, this idea to the world. And so, you know, my children were involved in the business. They were very smart, or I'm sorry, they are very smart. They're really smarter than I am. I have 4 children involved in the business, and they're smarter than I am. They actually own and operate the Jim Shorkey Family Auto Group, and I just needed to get out of the way. So at that juncture of kind of recognizing that, of getting out of the way, was when I said, okay, it's time to start this new idea. And Chuck really was at the genesis of that. You know, I mean, I was into it, but not that far, maybe a year into it, trying to figure out, okay, what is the message, right? What is the message? And probably in the stuff that Darlene brought today is going to be some handwritten stuff. I remember when the first time I talked to Chuck about the strategic continuum, I wrote it out on a napkin, and he probably has that somewhere. And so it was written on a napkin, and then Chuck made it into something that was a little more made sense. I never had a true vision of it in terms of a picture. I could say, well, here's the strategic continuum. I always drew it out. I drew it out on a whiteboard. I drew it out on a napkin, whatever. Chuck turned it into an image. And then that image became more and more sophisticated to where now when you look at, you know, Rethink You, that image is very sophisticated. It talks about how to go about what the strategic continuum really represents, right? So Chuck really was at the genesis of that effort to say, okay, let's take this message to the world. And so I took that message to Chuck Bolena and other people as well. And the results were incredible. Like Chuck Bolena sold more stuff. He wasn't a part of Rethink You, but he sold more stuff. He did more stuff. Things got better. So I knew that there was something to that. And then there were other people as well. And so we kept working it. But then Chuck and I, after that, we decided to, you know, lock arms. And so Chuck became a part of Results from Thinking and became not just a part of it, but a creator of it. So we had already had this basis for, well, here's what we're gonna do, but then Chuck continually put his information into it. So when we talk about Rethink You, we really are talking about Chuck Bolena. Chuck Bolena is in Rethink You. He's in there. I mean, not just the videos, well, he's on the videos, he's part of the videos, but beyond that, the whole structure of it is Chuck Bolena. Because what I did was I said, well, Chuck, here's what I think. And so he took those notes and he turned it into something that was much more palatable. Because I'm not the writer, I'm the talker. You know what I mean? I'm the talker. And so Chuck turned my words into this program called Rethink You. So was I excited? I was just excited about this idea because I knew what it meant to me. And Chuck was just a guy that happened to, you know, be in a certain place at a certain time, and we hooked up. And I love Chuck. I love Chuck. He's just such a great person, still is. But it wasn't like that was any kind of a plan. It really wasn't. It was like, hey Chuck, how you doing? Hey, you know, long time no see. Blah blah blah. What are you doing now? Oh, I'm doing this. Hey, yeah, let's have a talk sometime. And it kind of morphed from there, as Darlene is relating as well. It was not like it was there wasn't a plan, but the plan evolved from that. That's a long answer to a short question, I realize, but that's what happened.
So I remember, Darlene, you had told me in Chuck's last days, he was very strong. Like up until his last moment, he was hopeful, he was excited, he was present, right? Mm-hmm. And so
as much as he could.
Part of that being present, I think it's important for people to hear the strength that Chuck had until the end and through the end, and what that meant to him and what that meant to you. Does that
Mm-hmm.
question make sense?
Yeah. So Chuck was very, very strong, and he was very much a fighter, and he fought with everything in him. And I'm going to share a story that I haven't shared with many people, but the day that his very last doctor's appointment, we went into Hillman, and I was pushing him in a wheelchair, and we were sitting in the waiting room waiting for them to call us back, and Chuck leaned over to me and he said, I want to leave the wheelchair in the waiting room. And I said, why do we need to leave the wheelchair in the waiting room? He said, because I want to prove to him that I'm strong enough to continue fighting and to continue with treatment. Now, mind you, this is exactly 1 week before he passed away. And so I said, all right, if you want to leave the wheelchair in the waiting room, we'll leave the wheelchair. And we did, and he walked to the waiting room, or to the exam room, and at that point it was like a little kid his balloon had just been burst, because that was when the doctor told him there was really nothing else that they could do and that he needed to just go home and enjoy his last days. And it was a very, very hard time, and it was hard to watch him because he had been fighting this for so long. But throughout that week after that, he was starting to, every day it was a downhill thing where you could see his mind wasn't as sharp. He was having a hard time verbalizing things. But he still knew what he wanted, and if I tried to push him too hard, he'd go. Like, no, don't rush me, don't push me. He'll do it in his time. And he did. There were people that he wanted to see. There were things that he wanted to do. My sister was there helping us, both of them. He had asked to see Jim and Amy the Wednesday, the night before Thanksgiving. And so I got on the phone with you, and within, I think, 20 minutes, I think you were at my door. He got to see his family, and he got to he made sure that he closed all those doors and said all those final things that he wanted to say. There was a couple people that didn't get a chance to see him, and I felt bad for that, but we needed time as a family as well, realizing that this was happening a lot quicker than any of us had anticipated, and not realizing that we were going to lose him that night. We thought we still had, even the hospice nurse told us, you've got a couple weeks. Yeah. But even up until that night, my family had been over for Thanksgiving dinner. They didn't stay long. It was dinner, and we left. And after they left, I kind of leaned over to him, and he had pumpkin pie for dinner. That's one of the things he wanted, so I made sure he ate pumpkin pie. But I leaned over to him, and I said to him, thank you for letting me have my family there. And he got the biggest smile on his face and that twinkle in his eye. Yep. And it was, to me, it was like he was saying, I got to do that one last thing for her. And that it was so heartwarming, and I wasn't the only one that got to witness it. But that night, he had a lot of struggles nearing the end until we were able to get him comfortable. But, it was up until he passed away at 2:30 something, and up until probably about 1:30, he was still telling us that he loved us. And, it was just such a blessing. It was harder for him for you to understand him. His words were not as audible, but, you knew what he was saying. So, he fought right up until the very end. And, I feel like he held on, and he fought with everything in him until the doctor said, that's it, no more. Yeah. And he wasn't going to drag this out. And I know that it was not his timing, but I feel so blessed to know that he didn't suffer more than he did. That, within that moment that he took his last breath, that he was in glory, and there was no more port. There was no more of all of that medical intervention that was part of his body. And that helped me to rejoice in knowing that he was just at peace. So.
What about you, Jim? What was that like to hear that such a close friend and colleague and inspiration to you was kind of, in his last few hours? I know you rushed over in those you got over quick. And
Yeah. Well, it was so Chuck died on Friday morning. This would have been Wednesday night. So, and we didn't know Chuck was dying as quickly as he was. So nobody knew that, including Darlene. But Chuck had asked to see me, and I never have my phone on. My phone's never on. It's on, but the ringer is not on. So Darlene called my phone, and of course I didn't answer because I don't know that she's calling me. Then she called Amy, and then somehow I don't know if I talked on Amy's phone or if Darlene called me back, whatever the case may be, but we talked. So, well, Chuck wants to see us, and I'm on my way, And so the only reason for the delay was because I didn't get the call. But, Amy, Chuck wants to see us. We're out of here. So we drove over. They literally live 10 minutes from us, right? So we're over there. And, you know, Chuck was and is a remarkable person. Remarkable. And so we go to see Chuck, and I said, Chuck, what do you need me to do? You know, he says, I'm a list guy. I'm a taskmaster, right? What do you need me to do? And he told me some things he needed me to do. And I said, okay, done. Okay, done. Okay, yeah, all right, I'll get that. Yeah, okay, done. Done. I said, okay, now what else, Chuck? And Chuck was very, very clear in that he wanted to survive. He wanted to survive. And I said, Chuck, I said, here's the deal. I said, you will survive. I said, you're going to live on through me. And I promise you, you know, and I don't take promises lightly. When I promise somebody something, that's a promise. So I said to Chuck, I said, you will, and Darlene was there, so she knows this isn't something I could make up. He says, I want to survive. And so I said, you'll survive through me. You will live on through Jim Shorkey, and we will continue the quest of Rethink You and that whole thing. We will carry on. And so what happened was, literally the next day. Well, that would have been. I'm sorry, not true. So Wednesday, now Thursday's Thanksgiving. I did not do it live on Thursday. I get the phone call from Darlene on Friday morning that Chuck had died, and I think I did a video that morning. I think you called me kind of early. I think I did a video on that morning, on the day after Thanksgiving. And if I didn't, then I did one on Saturday. I could go back and look. But it was obviously very difficult to do that. And I've continued to do that. So whatever we were doing before Chuck died has continued. And actually, we've actually upped the ante, which is why we're sitting here right now. We're upping the ante. We're not just continuing what Chuck started. We're upping the game. We're upping our game. And so we're working on stuff now, like you know, the discipline journaling and really getting the people to look at the story of what Jim Shorkey did back in 1998 and to just develop a webinar concept and just carry on where Chuck left off and add to that. So anyway, so to again, long answer to a short question, the promise was that Chuck would live on through me. And so as I got into this thing, I started doing the videos. I thought, well, that's not going to work. It's not going to work. In order for this to work, Chuck has to live on through each one of us, through all of us, right? Because we're going to take advantage of the butterfly effect, meaning that there's going to be people out there that are going to see Chuck's message because I'm going to deliver it, and they don't even know Chuck. They never met Chuck. They have no idea who this guy is. And then they're going to tell their kids, and their kids are going to tell their kids, and who knows, 50 years from now, Chuck Bolena's message is still being talked about. I really believe that. I believe that that's what's going to happen. And we just don't know what the downstream effect is to a message, in that who hears this message, and then who do they tell about this message, and then what direction do they take? Do they, like, in other words, they're heading east and they hear the message, say, you know what, I'm going the wrong way. I got to head west. And all the things that happen as a result of that change of direction, we just can't measure that. But that's really what Chuck wants. That's what Chuck wants. Chuck wants to cause people to affect a change in the direction of improving their lives, whether it be, their marriage, whether it be their finances, whether it be their health, whatever the case may be. Chuck's message was one of, okay, how are we going to improve this? And that's where he came from as a life coach, which is, his training was actually in that field. And so, he loved it.
Do you remember the message he gave you?
Well, he gave me a lot of messages.
I know,
okay.
But I'm going to tell this story. The Saturday before Chuck passed away, when Jim took him out for lunch, Chuck came home after that, and he told me this story, and then we shared it with you on Wednesday night. Chuck was having a hard time articulating it, so he let me share it. But he said, and this is Jim's message.
She tells the story better than I could tell it anyway.
Jim's message from Chuck.
Darlene.
So he came home and he was telling me about the lunch that they had and where they went and everything. And I kind of laughed because they went out in, what is your vehicle? What's your car?
Mercedes-Benz.
Her Mercedes-Benz. And I laughed because Chuck was in his basically pajama pants, Crocs, and his t-shirt, and they go into this nice restaurant as he's rolling out of a Mercedes-Benz. But so we laughed about that. But the one thing that he said to me about going out with Jim was, and he was all excited about this, and this is going to sound weird, but Jim had a hamburger.
Cheeseburger.
A cheeseburger. He ate a cheeseburger. And I couldn't understand why that was a big deal. I knew that Jim was always very cautious about what he put into his body and everything, but he said Jim ate a cheeseburger. He was present with me in that moment, and that meant the world to him. So when they came over on Wednesday, I shared that with them, and his message to you is to always be present.
Yeah. And that gives me a massive chill. And, Darlene tells the story very well. And when you ask me, well, do you remember the message Chuck gave you? Well, which one? There were 1,000 of them, So Chuck, I learned a lot more from Chuck than I ever taught him. I really believe that. But so interestingly, I did talk to Chuck on that Friday, and it was a very, very tough phone call. He was very, very demoralized. And so we had already talked about having a date. I said, just pick you up in the car, we'll go for it. And well, I'll tell this story in a second, but so we'll just go for a ride. Maybe we'll go to the park, sit on the bench, whatever. And so we had already decided that, and I said, well, so we're having this conversation. Chuck's very, very upset, as Darlene can attest to. I mean, certainly, the doctor said, hey, we're done. There's no more to do. So he's very upset, and we're having this conversation. I said, Chuck, well, I'll come pick you up. Let's go do something. He says, you know what? He says, today, it's just not a good day. I got to meet with a lot of people today. Obviously, his wife and Sam and Jordan and just people the family. I think that was what he just needed to get his head wrapped around us. He said, but how about tomorrow? So we agreed that we would go on our date on this Saturday, right? And so I've got the Mercedes-Benz, and it's a convertible, and so I'm ready. I've got my hat, I've got my gloves. I'm picking Chuck up in the convertible, right? And I'm going to have the top down when I do this. And I mean, it's cold. It was probably 40 degrees. Well, so it's probably 40 degrees. But I got my gloves, my hat. I said I was going to have Chuck do the same thing, but it was raining. It literally was raining. So no convertible top down, for obvious reasons. And so I pull up to Chuck's house, Chuck and Darlene's house, excuse me, and I met Jeff Hanks, which I really appreciated. It was really cool to meet Jeff because he's a part of this thing. He's part of the following of Rethink You. And so we had a great conversation, Chuck and Jeff and myself. And then okay, Chuck, let's go. So, and Darlene was there, and she had left with her sister, as I recall. They had to go do some task or whatever. So Chuck and I get in the car and we go, and I said, Chuck, where do you want to go? He says, let's just go for a ride, So the car has heated seats. It's got massagers, and I'm messing with that, and I was listening to at the time, what was I listening to? I was going to say Tolstoy, Mozart. So I got Mozart on there, and I love Mozart, and I got that playing, and I said, Chuck, is that bothering you? And it kind of was, so turned it down to a real low volume. How about the heated seats? A little too hot, okay, turn those off, got the massage, that feels good, so we're doing a massager, and we just go out for a ride, and we leave his neighborhood, and we head out into the country, and we're driving out past, it's going to sound kind of strange, but there's a garbage dump locally here. People that live here know about this. So we drive out past the dump, and we're just having a conversation, right? And so I said, hey, Chuck, you want to stop and get something to eat? And he said that he did not, but I said, well, do you need anything? He's like, I could really use some water. So we stopped out in export area, Murraysville export area, and there was a little gas station-y type thing, and we got some water, and then we just kept driving, and we drove down 22 and got on Old 66, and we're driving. We ended up driving through Greensburg, and I said, now we're talking about getting something to eat. So Chuck said, yeah, I wouldn't mind getting a salad or something. So we're in Greensburg, and I said, well, there's a great place there, but there was believe it or not, there was a rally going on. It was a very large Donald Trump rally, and there were people everywhere. And so I knew that Chuck didn't want to walk any great distance. So I said, well, there's this place here, but there was no place to park, and I just wasn't going to do that to Chuck. So I said, well, there's no place to park, Chuck. Let's just keep rolling. So we roll, and we headed out. I said, well, do you have any other place that you maybe would like to go? And he said, well, there's a place out at the mall that he wanted to go to, out at Westmoreland Mall. So okay, so we head out there, and it turned out the place he wanted to go to wasn't. It wasn't there, like they had gone on a business or whatever. But there was another restaurant. I don't remember the name of it, but it was a great place. So we go in there, and I never thought about Chuck having his clogs on, pajama bottoms. He's got his Hakuna Matata T-shirt on, and it's Chuck. And I just, it wasn't even a thought in my mind. Like I could, if somebody would say, "What's the guy doing with his clogs on?" I said, "You know what? I don't care. I didn't care, right?" So we go in this restaurant. It wasn't a question I didn't care. I didn't even notice. Until Darlene pointed out to me and said, "You're right. He probably did look like a freaking goof." But so we go in there and we had the time of our lives. We did. We had the time of our lives. Chuck was a remarkable person. Chuck is a remarkable person. So we had the time of our lives. And we actually, and I also bought desserts, which I don't do desserts. Try not to.
You were being present.
I was being present. So I bought a dessert for Chuck and for Darlene. I said, well, you have this later. Come on, let's go, Chuck. And then Amy and I also, we didn't eat the dessert there because I think Chuck was getting tired. So, and I ordered a cheeseburger. And actually, Chuck, Mr. Health, got the salad with the shrimp. I'm looking for, I'm getting a cheeseburger. So I got a cheeseburger, and which is not the healthiest choice, granted. So that's what I did. And we had the time of our lives, and so we're leaving. And when I got there, I dropped Chuck off because Chuck was having a hard time walking, and I was very cognizant of that. I didn't want to put Chuck out, so I dropped him off the door, and I said, I went and parked the car, and I always park away. That's a Jim Shorkey strategy. So if we're going to be here and I can park here, I'm going to park down over the hill and walk up because it's just a good idea when you're trying to be healthy to do those extra steps. So they always say you should park far away from the grocery store, for example. So I park like I do, and then I walk in, and Chuck's in there, and we get seated, and we're doing our thing. And so now we're leaving, and I said, and this is what Darlene was talking about earlier. I said to Chuck, I said, okay, I'm gonna go get the car. You stand here. I'm Mr. Bossy, right? I'm gonna go get the car. You stand here. Don't move, and I'll be right up. He says, no. I said, no, I'm walking. And this was a couple 100-yard walk at least. So we walk out to the car. Chuck gets in the car, and now we're continuing our conversation. Okay, and so I'll never forget this. We get to Harrison City, which is where we live, but Harrison City is a little town that's part of where we live. And we go through Harrison City, and I looked at Chuck. We were at a red light, and I said, Chuck, what do you need? What do you need me to do? Tell me what you want to do. What do you want to do? He says, I'm good. He says, I don't need anything. I said, Chuck, come on. I worked all these years. I have the money. I said, I'll write you a check. I'll send you here. What do you want to do? What do you want to do? I said, Jim, I'm good. So I'm good. There's this guy. He says, I'm good. And he wouldn't let me write him a check. He wouldn't let me do anything. He says, I'm good. I am good. I said, well, it was our standing joke. I said, well, Chuck, you know what I'm going to say next, right? Yeah. He says, if I don't call you, I'm a dumbass. Yeah, that's right, Chuck. So I offered, if you don't call me, you're the dumbass. And that was our standing joke. Am I right? Mm-hmm. Yep. And so there never was a phone call. And he was happy. Chuck, in Harrison City, the Saturday before he died, Chuck was a happy man, and he didn't want anything. He didn't want to go to Deep Creek. He didn't want to go to Florida. He didn't want anything. He didn't know what the deadline was. He didn't. And so there were things he could have done. He didn't want them. He was happy. So I thought that was remarkable. I really thought, man, this guy, he's up against it. You know what I mean? To be able to be in a position to say, no, I'm good. And that's exactly what he said. He says, no, I'm good. I said, come on, Chuck. No, I'm good. I'm good, Jim. I'm good. I don't need anything. That's pretty freaking remarkable. So we head home, and then Darlene tells me about the Crocs and the thing after that following Wednesday. This was Saturday, the following Wednesday, and And I think actually when we were talking, I might have said, Chuck, well, we're going to do it again, Chuck. Let's get together. We didn't know. We didn't know that it was. I mean, didn't know. Like this was Wednesday night, Thanksgiving. Chuck was gone. I had the conversation with Chuck. Less than a day and a half later, he was gone. I didn't know that. And it wasn't that we could have done anything different at that point. But so fast forwarding to that, it was back to Chuck. What do you need? And he told me some things that he needed me to do, and we did those. Right? Yep. And then the last thing he said was, he exact quote, I think, was, I want to survive. I said, you will. And so that now here we are sitting here carrying on this message of Chuck Bolena. That's why we're here today.
Okay, Darlene, you were giving us an update on how you're doing.
The big question, how am I doing? How are the kids doing? Overall, we are doing well. I'm doing well. I take it day by day is my standard answer. I have good days and I have not so good days. You know, there are several things that I think help me. One is all of the lessons that Chuck had learned over the 6 years with working with Jim that I kind of put into practice. But I think one of my biggest things is my faith. It helps me to get through it day by day. Chuck lived such an incredible faith-filled life. Wasn't afraid when he knew he was going to die because he knew where he was going. So I try to live that life for him. It's hard. I can say all loss is different in the aspect of, you know, people lose their parents and they lose spouses and they lose children and they lose friends. And the best way for me to describe it is there was 240 people present at Chuck's service on December 25th. There have been over 1,600 people that have watched his service online. Wow. We all lost Chuck, yeah. But Chuck was different to every single one of us in that room or online. I can't say to my children, I know how they feel. I can't say to his mother, I know how she feels, just like they can't say that to me. The loss is so different. I never thought that I would be a widow at 50 years old. It's not something that anybody ever wants to go through, especially this young. It's hard for me because I have been with Chuck since 1988, which was the same year I graduated high school. We were really good friends in high school, and then we started dating shortly after. So I don't know my life without him. I'm not that same person that I was in high school. So me moving forward, I'm trying to figure out who I am, what God wants for my life. Where do I go from here? Every relationship in my life has changed, every single one of them. Some for the better. I have an extremely strong relationship with my sisters. I don't know how I would have ever gotten through this without them. My relationship with my parents, my relationship with my children, I believe is stronger. All of my friendships have changed. Some for the better, some for the worse. Some just change just because they're changing, because I don't have my other half, my person. Yeah. And so the dynamics of your friendships change, and that's okay. It's natural. It's going to happen. I can't say that it's always easy, but it will be okay. Chuck loved to hear me laugh. He told me that over and over again, and he told me that the week before he died. And on his phone, his screen was a picture of me from his 50th birthday party that I threw him. And it was me laughing. It was a very candid shot. I thought it was funny, a goofy picture, but it's me wide open laughing. And he loved it because I was so filled with joy that day, being able to bless him that way. And so I wake up every day. I get my butt out of bed.
Good for you.
Who am I going to benefit if I don't? I had this discussion with my son because there's days when he really struggles with it. And I said, you've got to get up every day and you've got to put one foot in front of the other, baby steps. You have to function. You have to do something.
Yeah.
Then my next thing in each day is to find at least one blessing. Even if I have to create that blessing and bless somebody. And there are days when I don't want to. I don't.
Yeah. But
I do, and I don't want to say force myself to, but again, I feel better when I do it. The other thing that I do is I make sure that I laugh every single day, because that's what Chuck would have wanted me to do. And I, I'm going to ruffle feathers. I'm not a believer that the cardinal that's coming to my back porch is Chuck. I'm not a believer that he is watching over me, because I believe that when you're in heaven, you are in heaven. And I hope and I pray that heaven is not a place where they're all standing over, watching over us, making sure we're okay. I don't believe that that's true, but I believe that I have his memories and I have all of the legacies that he has taught me. And part of that is strengthening my faith with him as husband and wife. And I feel that I'm a stronger person because of being married to him for almost 29 years. I feel like I'm stronger because he has taught me so much, and he has helped me to grow in the faith in my Lord, that I know that I'll be okay. And by saying that I'm going to be okay doesn't mean that it's going to be easy, but I'll be okay. So
I know you've had quite a few hardships over the past several months.
Yeah.
What does that look like for you?
Yeah, I've had this conversation with Amy, and it's about death, right? So we're talking about death here, right? And so on March 24th, 1996 was when my father died very suddenly. He dropped dead. There was no warning. There was no, hey, last request, none of that. My dad just literally dropped dead. Very, very devastating for me. And so I had to deal with the loss of my father. I had to deal with my siblings and my mom and all. There was just a massive family loss. But then there was also a business to run, which I proceeded to run the wrong way, and etc. But as we talk about that day, which was 25 years ago, in March, it'll be 25 years ago that my father died. But in that period of time, my 4 children got married. We have had 8 grandchildren, okay, in that 25-year stretch. We have traveled here, traveled there, done this, done that. We've done so many things. I mean, the list is literally endless of what we've done in that 25 years as a family and as a group, Amy and I. And I said, well, if we think about it, all the things that happened of a positive nature, and they didn't happen because my dad died. That's not what I'm saying. But the fact is, my dad did die, and we can't change that. But life goes on. And our job, Darlene and my job, is to see that life does go on. And I said in this discussion with Amy, I said, hey, if our life is half as good in the next 25 years as it's been in the past 25 years, there's some good stuff coming our way, right? Good stuff coming our way. So I've got to prepare for that, right? So you asked me about my own personal situation. So my niece, Hannah, who I was and am very, very close with, was tragically killed in a boating accident on Labor Day weekend. And so, and again, no warning, no last phone calls, no last discussion. She just was in this accident, horrifically injured, and she died. And so that's been very, very difficult, because again, it's a family thing, so it's not just a question of Darlene being sad about Chuck, but she also has to deal with Jordan and Samantha and Chuck's mom and all these different people around Chuck. So she can't get away. None of us can get away from this because of the family, right? Everybody's grieving at the same time, right? So it's been a very difficult thing. And then Chuck became very, very ill in an unexpected manner. So when my niece was killed, there was no thought in my mind of, well, okay, Chuck's next. That wasn't the thought. It was like, well, Chuck's going to beat this thing, right? Chuck thought he was going to beat it. Darlene thought he was going to beat it. We all did. So I had to deal with my niece. Well, then, if you think about it, so that was the beginning of September. So now we have September, October, and November. 3 months later, now Chuck dies. And that's been very difficult. Well, at the time that Chuck died, literally the day Chuck died, my mother had already been in the hospital, and she ended up contracting COVID. And so all communication shut down. Nobody could visit her. She was on a ventilator, so there was no conversation at all, none. And, you know, the messaging every day was, well, you know, Mom's not worse, she's not better, good night, bad night, this kind of a thing, but she wasn't making progress. And it became pretty obvious from the time Chuck died going forward that my mom was most likely not going to make it out of this, because the longer you're on the ventilator, the less chance you have of getting off it. So in the meantime, Chuck died. We had the funeral experience, the whole thing. Well, my mom's appears to be dying. Well, on December 26th of this past year, my mom did in fact die. So now in a matter of 4 months, I have 3 people very close to me. My mom, Chuck Bolena, and Hannah have all died. And so it is overwhelming. But I still have to, number one, to Darlene's advice, spot on. I got to get up and I got to take the first step. I got to put one foot in front of the other. And I can tell you right now, if Chuck Bolena probably wouldn't be happy that we're sitting around talking about him right now. He'd be saying, hey, get out there and go meet somebody, do something, help somebody, you know? Hopefully this is going to help a lot of people. But Chuck would not want us sitting around being sad about him. I know he wouldn't. I know Chuck. I met with Chuck literally either in person or over the phone every day, every freaking day. So I don't think Chuck would be happy that we were feeling sad about him, right? I don't think he would be. But nevertheless, we are. But to Darlene's advice, we need to put one foot in front of the other. So yes, we do need to do the videos. And yes, we do need to do this. And yes, we do need to make the green tea. And yes, we do need to do the push-ups. And yes, we do need to go for the walk in the woods today. And it's not easy. It's not easy. It's not. It's hard. But Darlene's right. You know, what can I do to bless somebody today? What can I do to make somebody's day? What can I do to make it a better day for somebody else? And so I feel like with what happened to me with my niece and my mom and Chuck Bolena, I feel like it's piling on. That's what I feel like. I feel like, come on. I mean, geez, enough's enough. But I still have to go back and say, well, okay, if I just look at my mom died on December 26th of 2020. If life is half as good in the next 25 years as it has been for the past 25 years since my father died, we're going to hit home runs. Darlene and I are going to hit home runs. What's coming? We don't know. But I really believe that Darlene is never going to look back on this and say, well, Chuck died, look how good I have it now. No, that's not what I'm saying. But she's going to look back on this and have great memories, and she's going to say, wow, this happened, and that happened, and this happened. I mean, likelihood she may be a grandmother. Well, I mean, she doesn't want to miss that. She doesn't want to miss that. So this is what life is bringing her way. Maybe she'll get a different dog, or maybe Darlene's a beautiful lady. I'm sure Darlene is going to meet somebody. Somebody needs to meet Darlene. She's worthy of that, right? And Chuck, by the way, wants that. He does. I know he does. So what's life going to bring us in the next 25 years? And closing out, again, a long answer to a short question. What Darlene said earlier is very profound. If she curls up and doesn't get out of bed in the morning, life stops. Life stops at that point. So she's got to get up and put that one foot in front of the other, make her green tea, drink her water, and she's got to go bless people. That's what she has to do. That's what she has to do. That's what Chuck wants her to do. So that's what I have to do as well. Easy? No. Doable? Yeah, it is doable. It really is. It is doable, but it's not easy.
If I can add to that too, because like Jim said, it's not easy, and I don't want it to come across like it's easy, because it depends on what day you catch me on whether or not it's going to be a good day or a bad day. And like Jim and Chuck had always taught, seek expert counsel. And I've done that through my grieving process. I have some very close friends that I've talked to, my sisters, my pastor, who has been an immense form of strength. And he also just recently, I said, I think that it is time that I do possibly seek a grief counselor. And I said, but I don't want one that's going to dwell on what happened, because I know what happened. And I know why it happened, or I don't know why it happened, but I know, the whole steps that we got there. And I think that Chuck and I had been grieving this for a while, kind of, even though we prayed that it wasn't going to happen, I think we both kind of were preparing for it in some form of the sense of the word, prepare. But one of the things that I want is to learn how to move forward in my grief.
Yeah.
The stages of grief are real.
Yeah.
And I kind of balked at them at first. And I thought, no, I'm fine. But that was because I was in the numb phase of my grieving.
Yeah.
That changed. So, it's not easy, but it's an everyday thing, and you just have to continue to fight through it.
Yeah.
So.
And to be clear, we're on camera, and so Darlene got dressed up for this, and I guess I didn't, but nevertheless, I shaved. So this isn't totally real. We're keeping our composure, and so it comes across, and Darlene's laughing, and I'm laughing, and we're kind of having a good time here. But to make this seem like it's fun, it's not fun. This is not fun. It's not. Excuse my French, but it sucks. It really does suck. It's not fun. But it's all we got. So we have to make it fun. So when Darlene talks about blessing people, it's not necessarily fun, but it's what she needs to do. She needs to make it fun. And I think she's remarkable as well. I think she's doing a great job at it. But that doesn't mean she's having fun, or that it's easy, or that, Chuck died, let's go have a celebration. No, we're very sad about this. Very, very sad. And trying to figure out a way to get through it. But I do have to say, I think good stuff's coming our way, because I've experienced that. I really believe that. And that's why with Chuck's message, going on through all of us here, gosh darn, I'm working with an 18-year-old young man right now, Hunter Ott, and 18 years old, selling real estate. And so Chuck is breathing into him right now. And it's like, is this guy going to get married? Is he going to have children? What's the impact of this thing going to be on him? I think Chuck would be really, really grateful for the fact that we're talking to Hunter Ott. I think he'd be grateful for that. And that's really the point, and it's not easy. It's like, Hunter's going to call me, we talk on Thursday. So he's going to call me on Thursday. And it's like, maybe I'll just cancel today. And that's what my inclination is to cancel. But I know that that's not what Chuck would want me to do. He doesn't want me to cancel. He doesn't want Darlene to stay in bed. She posted me the other day on one of the videos. She says, curling up in bed and not getting in bed, that serves nobody. I think that's what you said, right? That serves nobody. And we're here to serve. So that's not what Chuck doesn't want Jim Shorkey, even though, it's like I pulled the covers up over me in the morning. It's like, this feels so good. I'm just going to stay here for a while. And it's like, push-ups, Jim, push-ups. This feels so good. I'm going to stay here. Push-ups, Jim. I got to get up and do the darn push-ups. And so that's the answer. Got to do the push-ups.
You were talking about Jeff Hanks earlier, and I was out this morning at quarter after 5 shoveling my driveway. And Jeff has been walking past our house every single morning.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter the weather. And he said to me, I do it because I told Chuck I would do it. And he says, I feel better for doing it. And there's days that we don't want to do stuff like that. No. But, Chuck was meeting clients, I think, up until that Monday.
Yeah. Well, you stopped him.
Yeah, I did. I took his phone away.
Yeah, she did. That's true.
I said, that's enough. You've got to stop
done.
this.
Yeah.
And, because he just wanted to put as much into people as he possibly could in the time that he had left. And so now I always feel like part of what my job is now is to take that and use it, and I said that at his service. Chuck spread seeds everywhere, and our goal is to water those seeds and to harvest it and continue to plant seeds.
And they're Chuck seeds.
Whatever.
They're Chuck's. They really are. They really are Chuck seeds. When you do Rethink You, Chuck, that's every piece of the manual that you download with Rethink You. That's all Chuck Bolena. No, there's nothing Jim Shorkey about that. The words, the ideas. Yeah, here, Chuck. Here's what I think, and then he put it into something that made sense. The videos, I am doing the videos, but so is Chuck. So it's Chuck and Steve and myself. So Chuck intro, outro. But Chuck, you want to meet Chuck? Rethink You is a great way to meet Chuck. Am I right? Mm-hmm. It really is. It's Chuck. It's Chuck Bolena. That you know, the Darlene referred to it earlier, and she's so right. Is the sparkle in this guy's eye and the infectious smile and the laughter. Boy, what a great guy. What a great guy.
He didn't talk a lot about his faith either. He did if the door would open up, but that was such a huge part of who Chuck was in talking, was the faith that he had. That's what gave him the peace to know where he was going to be. That was where he got his strength from and the direction and his guidance from. You know, that was what his faith and belief in the Lord was, where he got the basis for everything that he did.
Yeah.
So, and that is something that he would want everybody to carry on with them as well. That was the biggest seed that he scattered.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah. Agreed.